While I was cooking dinner for my entire family, my daughter-in-law was sitting right across from me, smiling, while secretly texting someone to throw me out of my own house. I didn't know it at the time, but that night, every smile at that table was a lie, and by the end of dinner, I would discover something that would change my life forever. While I was cooking dinner for my entire family, the kitchen felt exactly the way it used to years ago, warm, alive, filled with the kind of quiet happiness I had spent decades building. Steam rose gently from the pot on the stove, fogging the edges of the window above the sink. The scent of roasted chicken, garlic, and rosemary wrapped around me like a memory I didn't want to lose. For a moment, if I closed my eyes, I could almost hear my late husband, Richard, walking in from the backyard, brushing dirt from his hands, asking what smelled so good. But when I opened my eyes, there was only silence behind me. I stirred the sauce slowly, careful not to let it burn. At 68, my hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but cooking had always been something my body remembered even when my heart felt tired. Tonight mattered. It had been months since we all sat down together like this. My son Ethan, his wife Chloe, and me. Life had grown distant. Busy, they said. Complicated. But I had learned that sometimes busy was just another word for not making time. Still, I told myself tonight would be different. I had set the table with the good plates. The ones Richard and I bought on our 25th anniversary. I even took out the cloth napkins, pressing them earlier that afternoon while the radio played softly in the background. Small things, maybe. But small things used to mean something in this family. I glanced at the clock. 6:12 p.m. They were late. Not unusual, but tonight it felt heavier. I turned down the heat and wiped my hands on a kitchen towel, listening closely. The house had a way of holding its breath when it was empty. Every creak of the floor, every hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than it should. Then finally, I heard it. The front door opened. Voices followed. Ethan's voice came first, familiar, warm but rushed. Chloe's voice came right after, lighter, controlled. The kind of tone that always sounded polite but never quite reached warmth. "They're here," I whispered to myself, though there was no one else to hear it. I straightened my blouse without thinking and stepped toward the hallway. Ethan appeared first, taller than I remembered every time I saw him, his jacket half-buttoned, his phone still in his hand. "Hey, Mom," he said quickly, leaning in for a brief hug that ended before it really began. "Hi, sweetheart," I replied softly, holding on to that moment just a second longer than he did. Behind him, Chloe stepped inside. She looked flawless as always. Her hair fell neatly over her shoulders, her coat tailored perfectly to her frame. She smiled when she saw me, wide, practiced, precise. "Margaret," she said. "Not Mom." Never Mom. I had stopped expecting it years ago, though I wasn't sure I had ever truly stopped noticing. "Dinner's almost ready," I said, forcing a smile of my own. "I made your favorites." Ethan nodded, distracted already, glancing down at his phone again. Chloe stepped past me into the house, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. For a brief second, her eyes moved across the living room. Not admiring, not curious. Assessing. I felt it, though I couldn't explain why. Then she smiled again. And just like that, the moment passed. Or at least, I thought it did. The house slowly filled with the kind of noise I had missed more than I cared to admit. Coats were hung. Shoes were left slightly out of place near the door. Ethan walked into the living room, already loosening his collar, while Chloe moved with quiet confidence, as if she had been in control of every space she entered. I returned to the kitchen, lifting the lid off the pot to check the sauce again. The steam rose quickly, carrying that rich, familiar smell that used to bring my family running to the table without being called. "Dinner smells good," Ethan said from behind me. I turned slightly, smiling. "It's your favorite. Roasted chicken, just the way you used to like it." "Yeah," he replied, but his voice drifted off before the sentence finished. I noticed his eyes weren't on me. They were on his phone again. A small pause settled between us. "Can you set the table?" I asked gently. "Sure, yeah," he said, though it took him a few seconds to actually move. Chloe appeared in the doorway then, leaning lightly against the frame. She watched us for a moment, quiet, observant, before stepping in. "Do you need help?" she asked. The question sounded polite. Brupe. But something about it felt distant. I've got everything under control, I replied. You can just sit. Dinner will be ready in a few minutes. She nodded, offering a small smile, then turned away without another word. I watched her go, my hand still resting on the wooden spoon. There it was again. That feeling. Like I was hosting guests, not family. We sat down a few minutes later. The table looked exactly the way I had imagined it earlier that afternoon. Plates neatly arranged. Napkins folded just right. Glasses catching the soft light from above. For a moment it almost felt normal. I served the food carefully, placing portions on each plate the way I had done for years. Ethan thanked me quietly. Chloe nodded with a polite thank you, barely looking up. We began to eat. At first, the only sounds were the soft clink of silverware and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background. Then Ethan spoke. Work's been busy, he said. We're expanding the project downtown. That sounds wonderful, I replied, genuinely trying to engage. You've always worked so hard. He smiled briefly, but it didn't last. Chloe added something about a new client, her tone smooth and controlled. I listened, nodding, asking small questions where I could. But the conversation felt rehearsed. Like everyone was playing their part. Halfway through dinner I noticed it. Chloe's phone, resting just beside her plate, lit up. She didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she kept eating, listening to Ethan speak, nodding at the right moments. Then casually, almost too casually, she picked it up. Her eyes dropped to the screen for just a second. And in that second, something in her expression changed. It was subtle. So subtle that anyone else might have missed it. But I didn't. Because I had spent a lifetime watching people I loved. Her smile tightened. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Typing. Not long messages. Short ones. Fast ones. Like this wasn't the first time. I looked down at my plate, pretending not to notice. But something inside me had already shifted. The warmth in the room felt thinner now. Colder. And for the first time that night, I had the quiet, unsettling feeling that whatever was happening at this table had nothing to do with dinner. I kept my eyes on my plate, cutting the chicken slowly, carefully, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Once you notice something like that, a look, a shift, a moment that doesn't quite belong, you can't unsee it. I told myself I was imagining things. That Chloe was just replying to a message. That Ethan was just tired. That this distance sitting between us was normal. But deep down, something in my chest had already started tightening. Mom, the chicken's really good, Ethan said suddenly. I looked up, surprised. Thank you, I replied, offering a small smile. I remember you used to ask for this every Sunday. Yeah, he said, nodding. You made it better back then, though. He laughed lightly after saying it, as if it were a harmless joke. I smiled back. But something about it didn't feel like a joke. Chloe let out a soft chuckle, barely lifting her eyes from her plate. I think it's still good, she added. Polite. Measured. Safe. A few minutes passed in that same careful rhythm. Eat, speak, pause. Then Chloe's phone lit up again. This time, the light was brighter. Closer to me. And for a brief second, just a second, the screen angled in my direction. I didn't mean to look. But I did. And I saw enough. Did you talk to her yet? My breath caught, but I didn't move. Chloe picked up the phone immediately this time, her fingers moving quickly, shielding the screen from view. Too quickly. Too deliberately. I lowered my eyes again, forcing myself to stay still. To stay quiet. To listen. Actually, Chloe said after a moment, setting her phone down beside her glass. Her tone had changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Ethan glanced at her. What? He asked. She dabbed her lips gently with her napkin, then looked at me. Directly this time. It's just, she began, her voice soft, almost careful. I've been thinking about something for a while. My hands rested quietly in my lap. I waited. So have I, Ethan added quickly, though he didn't look at me when he said it. That was the moment my stomach dropped. Because whatever this was, it wasn't new. Chloe folded her hands neatly on the table. You've done an incredible job taking care of this house, she said, her tone smooth, almost practiced. It's really beautiful. I nodded slowly. Thank you. But, she continued, her eyes never leaving mine, it's a lot of work. For one person. There it was. The shift. Clear now. No longer hidden behind polite smiles or casual conversation. Ethan cleared his throat beside her. We just think, he said, hesitating slightly. Maybe it's time to start thinking about options. Options. Such a small word. Such a dangerous one. I felt my fingers curl slightly against my palm. What kind of options? I asked quietly. Chloe and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. Just a second. But long enough. Long enough to tell me everything I needed to know. Then Chloe spoke again. Well, she said gently, maybe somewhere smaller. Easier to manage. Easier. Manage. The words sounded kind. Reasonable. But beneath them, I could feel something else. Something colder. Something already decided. I looked at Ethan. Really looked at him this time. At the way he avoided my eyes. At the way his shoulders tensed slightly, like he was bracing for something. And in that moment, the message I had seen just minutes earlier echoed in my mind. Did you talk to her yet? My heart beat slower now. Heavier. Because suddenly, this dinner didn't feel like a family gathering anymore. It felt like a conversation they had already had. Without me. For a few seconds no one spoke. The air at the table felt heavier, like something invisible had settled between us. Something that hadn't been there when they first walked through the door. I reached for my glass of water, mostly to give my hands something to do. I see, I said quietly. And I did. More than they realized. Chloe tilted her head slightly, her expression softening just enough to appear concerned. We're not saying you have to do anything, she added quickly. Of course not. It's just something to think about. Something to think about. I almost smiled at that. Because nothing about this felt like a suggestion. It felt like a plan. Ethan shifted in his seat. Mom, it's just that houses like this can be a lot, he said. The upkeep, the bills, the space. His voice trailed off, like he was searching for the right words. Or maybe the safest ones. I've managed it for over 40 years, I replied calmly. I know, he said quickly. And you've done an amazing job. But things change. Things change. There it was again. That quiet push. That gentle pressure disguised as concern. Chloe picked up her fork again, cutting into her food with careful precision. And honestly, she added almost casually, it might make more sense for the house to be used differently. I looked at her. Differently. I repeated. She nodded, setting her fork down again. Well, Ethan and I have been talking, she said. About the future. About space. About family needs. Family needs. I felt something tighten in my chest. And what does that have to do with my house? I asked, my voice still steady. Ethan exhaled slowly, finally meeting my eyes. Just for a moment. We thought maybe, he began, hesitating. If you moved somewhere smaller, we could make better use of the space, Chloe finished for him smoothly. The sentence landed softly, but it hit hard. I sat back slightly in my chair, studying both of them now. Really studying them. The way Chloe remained composed, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. The way Ethan avoided holding my gaze for more than a second at a time. And suddenly, everything made sense. The phone. The message. The timing. Better use. I repeated slowly. Chloe nodded again. Yes. I mean, this house is large. It could easily accommodate more than one household. More than one. There it was. Finally. Not hidden anymore. My mother has been thinking about downsizing, Chloe added lightly, as if it were just another detail. And we thought, instead of her moving somewhere unfamiliar, it might make sense for her to come here. Silence followed. A long, quiet silence. Because now, there was nothing left to misunderstand. I felt my fingers press lightly against the edge of the table. Not from anger. Not yet. From clarity. So, I said slowly, looking directly at her. You want me to leave so your mother can move into my house? Chloe didn't flinch. Not even a little. When you put it like that, it sounds harsh, she replied calmly. That's not what we're saying. I turned to Ethan. He didn't speak. Didn't defend me. Didn't correct her. He just sat there. Quiet. And in that moment, the last piece fell into place. Because it wasn't just Chloe's plan. It was his too. I leaned back slightly, my voice quieter now. Is that what the message was about? I asked. Both of them froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. Chloe's eyes flickered. Ethan's hand stilled on the table. And suddenly, the room felt very, very still. Because now, they knew I had seen it. For a moment, no one moved. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It presses against you, heavy and unavoidable. Chloe was the first to recover. I'm not sure what you mean, she said smoothly, her expression barely shifting. Too smooth. Too quick. Ethan glanced at her, then at me, his jaw tightening slightly. Mom, he started, but his voice lacked conviction. I didn't look away from Chloe. You should be more careful with your phone, I said quietly. Screens light up. Messages show. Another pause. This one longer. More fragile. Chloe slowly placed her napkin down beside her plate. Her movements were controlled, deliberate. Then she leaned back slightly in her chair and exhaled. Well, she said, her tone changing just a fraction, since we're being honest. There it was. No more pretending. Ethan rubbed his forehead, already looking tired. Chloe, he muttered under his breath, but he didn't stop her. Of course he didn't. Chloe folded her hands neatly in front of her. Yes, she said calmly. We've been discussing the situation. The situation? I almost laughed at that. So it's a situation now? I asked. It's a reality, she corrected gently. I felt something inside me settle. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder. Clearer. And who were you texting? I asked. Chloe didn't hesitate. My brother, she replied. He's a real estate consultant. Of course he was. He's been advising us on the best way to handle transitions like this. Transitions. Another soft word. Another sharp meaning. Ethan shifted again, finally speaking up. Mom, it's not like that, he said quickly. We're not trying to push you out or anything. I turned to him. Then what are you doing? I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Chloe, and in that moment, he gave me my answer. Chloe stepped in again, her voice calm, almost reassuring. We're trying to plan ahead, she said. That's all. Avoid complications later. Complications, I repeated. Yes, she nodded. Legal, financial, practical matters. I studied her face. The way she spoke. The confidence. The certainty. This wasn't new to her. She had thought this through. Carefully. And you thought the best way to do that, I said slowly, was to discuss it behind my back, while sitting at my table? Chloe's expression didn't crack. Not even a little. We were going to talk to you tonight, she replied. I let out a soft breath. After dinner, I said. Not a question. A statement. Ethan finally looked at me properly then. Yes, he admitted quietly. And something in my chest shifted. Because hearing it from him hurt more than anything Chloe had said. I nodded slowly. I see. And I did. More clearly than ever before. For years, I had told myself that distance was normal. That relationships change. That people get busy. That love looks different over time. But sitting there, looking at my son and the woman he chose to build his life with, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't distance. This was calculation. Chloe reached for her glass, taking a small sip of water. We're not your enemies, Margaret, she said softly. We're trying to find a solution that benefits everyone. Everyone. I almost smiled. Because for the first time that night, I understood exactly where I stood. And more importantly, where I didn't. I let the silence sit for a moment longer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to see if either of them would say something, anything, that sounded like family. They didn't. I picked up my fork again and took a small bite, chewing slowly, thoughtfully, as if we were still having an ordinary dinner. The food tasted the same, but everything else had changed. You should have told me, I said finally. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Ethan looked down at his plate. Chloe didn't look away from me. We're telling you now, she replied calmly. I nodded once. No, I said. You're informing me. That landed. I could see it in the way Ethan shifted again, uncomfortable now, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. Mom, that's not fair, he said quietly. I turned to him. Isn't it? I asked. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I heard the truth. For weeks, maybe months, you've been talking about this, I continued. Planning, consulting, deciding what should happen to my home. I let the word "my" sit there. Heavy, clear. And I only find out because your wife forgot to tilt her phone away from me. No one argued. No one corrected me. Chloe exhaled slowly, as if she were trying to remain patient. We didn't want to upset you prematurely, she said. Prematurely? I almost laughed. So you waited until dinner? I asked. Until I cooked for you, set the table, welcomed you into this house, to tell me I should leave it. Her expression tightened slightly, just for a second. Then it smoothed again. That's not what we said, she replied. I leaned forward just a little. It is exactly what you said, I answered quietly. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Mom, please, he said. You're making it sound worse than it is. I looked at him for a long moment, and something inside me finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. Worse than it is. I repeated. My voice softened, but it carried something deeper now. Your father built this house with his own hands, I said. Every wall, every floorboard, he worked for it. We built a life here. We raised you here. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't. And now you sit here, I continued, telling me it's too much for me, while making plans to move someone else in. Chloe straightened slightly. It's not someone else, she said. It's my mother. I met her gaze. That doesn't make it less my home, I replied. Another silence. This one sharper. More honest. Chloe's tone shifted again, just a fraction more direct. We're trying to think long-term, she said. At some point, decisions will have to be made. At some point, I echoed. Yes. I leaned back slowly in my chair, studying her. Then Ethan. Then the space between them. And suddenly, everything felt very clear. No, I said quietly. Both of them looked at me. Chloe's brows pulled together slightly. Ethan blinked. No, he repeated. I held his gaze. No, I said again. Those decisions won't be made by you. For the first time that night, Chloe didn't have an immediate response. And Ethan, for the first time, looked uncertain. Because something had shifted. Not in the room, but in me. And they could feel it. Chloe was the first to speak again. Her composure returned quickly, almost impressively so. I don't think you fully understand what we're trying to do here, she said, her tone still calm but firmer now. This isn't about taking anything from you. It's about making smarter choices before things become complicated. Complicated. That word again. I looked at her, really looked this time, not as my son's wife, not as someone I had tried for years to accept, but as exactly who she was in this moment. A person making decisions about my life, as if I weren't sitting right in front of her. And what exactly becomes complicated? I asked. Chloe didn't hesitate. Age, she said simply. Health. Legal matters. Unexpected situations. Each word landed carefully, deliberately, like she had practiced saying them. Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside her. Chloe, he murmured, but there was no real warning in his voice. Just hesitation. Always hesitation. I nodded slowly. So this is about preparing for when I can't take care of myself, I said. Chloe tilted her head slightly. It's about being realistic, she replied. I let out a quiet breath. Realistic. Such a reasonable word. Such a cruel one when used at the wrong time. I am taking care of myself, I said. Yes now, Chloe replied. But we're thinking ahead. We. I noticed that. Not you and your son. Not your family. Just we. I turned my attention back to Ethan. And you agree with all of this? I asked him. For a moment he didn't answer. His eyes moved between Chloe and me, like he was standing somewhere in the middle, and didn't know which direction to choose. Then he nodded. Slightly. But enough. Yeah, he said quietly. I think it makes sense. There it was. Not forced. Not pressured. His decision. Something inside me went still again. Not broken this time. Not hurt. Just still. Like a door closing quietly in a place no one else could see. I understand, I said. And for the first time that night, I meant it in a different way. Chloe seemed to relax just a little, as if she thought we were finally reaching an agreement. I'm glad, she said. Because if we handle this now, it'll be much easier for everyone later. Easier. For everyone. I folded my hands gently in front of me. And what exactly do you expect me to do? I asked. Chloe answered without hesitation. We think it would be best if you started looking for a smaller place, she said. Something manageable. Comfortable. And in the meantime? I asked. Ethan cleared his throat. Well, we could help with the transition, he said. Make things smoother. Help. Another kind word. Another sharp edge. And your mother? I asked, turning back to Chloe. She would move in once everything is settled, Chloe replied. Of course she would. I nodded again slowly, as if I were considering it, as if I were weighing their words, as if this were a discussion. Then I looked around the room, at the walls Richard had painted, at the table he had built, at the space that held every memory of the life we created together. And I realized something very clearly. They weren't asking. They were expecting. I turned back to them, my voice calm, steady, almost gentle. You've both put a lot of thought into this, I said. Chloe gave a small, satisfied nod. Ethan exhaled quietly. And then I added, but you made one mistake. That caught their attention. Chloe's expression tightened slightly. Ethan looked confused. What mistake? He asked. I held his gaze, and for the first time that night, I allowed a faint, knowing smile to appear. You assumed this was your decision to make. Ethan frowned slightly, clearly caught off guard. What do you mean? He asked. Chloe didn't speak this time. She was watching me more carefully now, measuring, recalculating. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch just enough to make them feel it. You've spent weeks planning this, I said calmly. Talking to each other, talking to other people, deciding what should happen to my home, my life. Neither of them interrupted, because they couldn't. But you never once stopped to ask me what I wanted, I continued. Ethan opened his mouth, but I raised my hand slightly, not harsh, just enough to pause him. And now, I said, you're sitting here expecting me to agree, as if this is already settled. Chloe straightened her posture. We're trying to have a conversation, she said. I nodded. No, iraplia. You're trying to present a conclusion. That landed harder than anything else I had said. I could see it in the way Ethan's shoulders dropped slightly, in the way Chloe's fingers tightened together on the table. For a brief moment no one spoke. Then Chloe inhaled slowly, her tone shifting again. This time less soft, more direct. Margaret, she said, with all due respect, this isn't just about you. There it was. Honesty. Finally. I looked at her. It isn't. I asked. No, she replied. It's about the family as a whole. About making responsible decisions that benefit everyone long-term. Everyone. That word again. And where exactly do I fit into that everyone? I asked quietly. Chloe didn't hesitate. You would be taken care of, she said. Taken care of. I let the words sit there. Felt them. Understood them. Taken care of. I repeated softly. Like an obligation. That's not fair, Ethan said quickly. I turned to him. Then explain it to me, I said. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've already decided what's best for me without me. He hesitated. Again. Always hesitation. Chloe stepped in before he could respond. We're offering a solution, she said. One that avoids future stress, legal complications, and unnecessary risk. Risk. I almost smiled. What risk? I asked. Her eyes held mine. The risk of things becoming difficult later, she said. If something happens unexpectedly. I nodded slowly. And you've decided the best way to avoid that is to remove me from my own home before anything even happens. Chloe's expression hardened slightly. When you phrase it like that. It sounds exactly like what it is, I finished for her. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. It was tense. Sharp. Ethan leaned forward, his voice lower now. Mom, no one's trying to hurt you, he said. We just want to make things easier. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I asked the question that had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind since this conversation began. Easier for who? That stopped him. Completely. Because there was no easy answer. Not one he could say out loud. Chloe, however, didn't look away. Easier for everyone, she said again. Steady. Certain. Unmoved. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't concern. This wasn't even about timing or planning. This was entitlement, carefully dressed in polite words. I folded my hands again, my voice calm. You've both made your position very clear, I said. Ethan nodded slightly, as if relieved we were finally reaching some kind of conclusion. Chloe remained still, watching me, waiting. Then I added, now let me make mine clear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. By that point, the room was already listening. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Simple. Clear. Final. Ethan blinked, like he hadn't expected it to be that direct. Mom, he started, but the word sounded smaller this time. Chloe didn't interrupt. She just watched me, carefully. This house, I continued, my voice steady, is not a discussion. It's not a shared decision. And it's certainly not something you get to plan around behind my back. I let that settle. Let them feel the weight of it. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting. Less confident now, more urgent. We're not trying to control anything, he said. We just thought. You thought you knew what was best for me, I finished. He stopped. Because that was exactly what he had thought. Chloe exhaled slowly, her patience thinning just a fraction. No one is taking anything from you, she said. You're overreacting. Overreacting. I almost smiled. Am I? I asked. My eyes stayed on hers. Because from where I'm sitting, you've already spoken to a real estate consultant. You've already discussed timelines. And you've already decided where I should go. Her expression tightened. Just slightly. But enough. That's called planning, she replied. No, I said quietly. That's called deciding for someone who was never part of the conversation. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't tense. It was clear. Ethan ran a hand over his face, frustration starting to show. Mom, why are you making this so difficult? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And for a moment, I saw the boy he used to be. The one who ran through these halls. The one who used to call this place home without hesitation. Difficult. I repeated softly. Yes, he said. We're trying to help, and you're just pushing back on everything. I nodded slowly. I'm pushing back, I said, because this is my life. That stopped him. And I don't need help deciding where I belong, I continued. Especially not from people who were ready to decide it for me without even asking. Chloe leaned forward slightly now, her voice firmer than before. You're taking this personally, she said. I held her gaze. It is personal. Another silence. Shorter this time. Sharper. Then she said something that changed everything. At some point, Chloe said, her tone no longer soft, you won't have a choice. The words hung in the air. Cold. Unapologetic. Ethan didn't stop her, didn't correct her, didn't even react. And that told me more than anything else that had been said tonight. I felt something inside me settle completely. Not anger, not hurt, just certainty. I leaned back slightly, my voice quieter now, but stronger than it had been all evening. Yes, I said. I will. Both of them looked at me, confused. Because unlike you, I continued, I actually prepared for the future. That got their attention. Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly. Ethan straightened in his chair. What does that mean? He asked. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch. Let the question sit between us. Then I looked at both of them. Calm, steady, unshaken. It means, I said slowly, you've been making plans. I paused. Just long enough. Without knowing what's already been decided. Chloe didn't blink. But Ethan did. Just once, quick, uncertain. What are you talking about? He asked. I folded my hands calmly on the table, the same way I had done 1,000 times before. But this time it wasn't out of habit. It was control. You've both been very busy making plans, I said. Consulting people. Discussing timelines. Deciding what happens next. I glanced briefly at Chloe. Very thorough. She didn't respond. But I could see it now. The shift. That tiny crack in her certainty. But there's one thing you didn't do. I continued. Ethan leaned forward slightly. What? He asked. I met his eyes. You didn't ask whether those plans were even possible. Silence. Chloe's fingers tightened slightly against the edge of the table. That doesn't make any sense, she said. Of course they're possible. This house, I interrupted gently, is not what you think it is. That stopped her. Completely. Ethan frowned. Mom, what does that mean? I took a slow breath. Not because I needed time to think, but because I wanted them to understand every word. 3 years ago, I said, after your father passed, I met with our lawyer. Ethan's posture shifted immediately. Confusion turned into attention. Chloe's expression sharpened. We reviewed everything. I continued. The house, the accounts, the estate. I let my gaze move between them. And your father made sure of something before he died. Ethan swallowed. What did he do? He asked. I held his eyes. He made sure that this house would never become a problem. Chloe leaned forward now, her calm finally cracking just slightly. In what way? She asked. I gave a small, almost quiet smile. In every way that matters. That wasn't enough for her. Of course it wasn't. She needed details. Control. Certainty. Margaret, she said, her voice tighter now. If there's something we need to know, you should just say it. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. Then I paused. Just long enough to let the weight build. The house, I said finally, is legally protected. Ethan blinked. Protected how? I leaned back slightly. It's held in a living trust, I explained. Created by your father. Managed by our lawyer. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Chloe's expression changed. Not dramatically. But enough. Enough for me to see it. That doesn't change anything, she said quickly. It just means ownership transfers differently. I shook my head once. No, I said calmly. It means something very specific. Ethan's voice dropped. What? I looked at him. Really looked at him. It means, I said slowly, that no one, not you, not anyone, can sell this house, transfer it, or make decisions about it without my explicit consent. The words settled over the table like a final answer. Chloe sat very still, processing, recalculating. And I haven't given that consent, I added. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Okay, but that just means we talk about it later, he said. Work something out. I didn't respond immediately. Because this was the moment. Then I said, no. Both of them looked at me again. This isn't something we'll work out, I continued. Because there is nothing to work out. Chloe's composure slipped, just for a second. That's not realistic, she said. I held her gaze. It's already reality. And for the first time that night, they had no plan left to fall back on. Chloe didn't move. Not even a flicker. But I saw it. That brief, almost invisible tension in her shoulders. The kind that only appears when control starts slipping. If I decide at any point that my home is no longer respected, I continued slowly, or that I'm being pressured, manipulated, or treated as anything less than the rightful owner. I let the words settle, every single one of them. Then the terms of the trust change. Ethan's head lifted immediately. What do you mean change? He asked. I looked at him. Steady, calm, certain. It means, I said, that everything, this house, the accounts, every asset your father left behind, can be redirected. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Chloe's eyes narrowed slightly. Redirected to who? She asked. Her voice was still controlled, but the edge was there now. Clear. I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to feel it. That uncertainty. That loss of control they had been so comfortable placing on me just moments ago. Not to you, I said finally. Ethan blinked. Mom. And not to anyone who believes they can make decisions for me without my consent. I added, my voice still quiet, but unshakable. That hit harder than anything else. Because now, this wasn't about the house anymore. Chloe leaned forward, her composure cracking just enough. That's not how families work, she said. I met her gaze. No. Iraplia. That's exactly how respect works. Ethan ran both hands through his hair, frustration rising. So what are you saying? He asked. That if we disagree with you, you just cut us out? I shook my head slowly. No, I said. Then I paused. Just long enough. I'm saying that if you treat me like I don't belong in my own home, I continued, then you've already stepped out of this family in the only way that matters. The room went still. Because this time, they understood. Chloe sat back in her chair, her expression no longer soft, no longer polite. Now it was calculating again. Searching for a new angle. A new strategy. That sounds extreme, she said. I gave a small, almost tired smile. So does planning to remove someone from their own home without telling them, I replied. Ethan looked between us, his voice quieter now. This isn't what we wanted, he said. I looked at him. And for a brief moment, I saw something real. Regret. Or maybe just realization. Then you should have thought about that before tonight, I said gently. Another silence. But this one was different. Not tense. Not uncertain. Final. No one spoke after that. Not for several seconds. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for resolution. Because it already is one. Ethan was the first to move. Slowly, he pushed his chair back and stood up, running a hand through his hair like he used to when he was a teenager, and didn't know what to say. I didn't think it would go like this, he muttered. I looked at him. Not as the boy I raised, not as the man sitting across from me tonight, but as someone I was seeing clearly for the first time. That's because you didn't think about me at all, I replied quietly. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Chloe stood next. More composed. More controlled. But different now. The confidence she walked in with wasn't quite the same. We were trying to plan for the future, she said, her voice firm, but no longer soft. I nodded. I know, I said. You just forgot one important thing. She held my gaze. What? She asked. The future doesn't belong to you, I said. That was the moment something in her finally stopped. Not dramatically, just quietly, like a door closing. Ethan picked up his jacket from the back of the chair, his movements slower now. Maybe we should go, he said. Chloe didn't respond immediately. Then she nodded once. Maybe we should. They didn't finish their dinner. The plate sat half full on the table. The food I had spent hours preparing, suddenly meaningless. I walked them to the door. Not out of habit. Not out of politeness. Just because it felt like the right ending. Ethan paused before stepping outside. "Mom," he said, his voice uncertain. "We'll talk again." I looked at him. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel the need to hold on to that possibility. "No," I said gently. "Next time you'll listen." He didn't answer. He just nodded slightly and stepped out. Chloe followed. But before she crossed the doorway, she turned back toward me. For a brief second, her eyes moved around the house again. Not assessing this time. Not calculating. Just looking. Then she met my gaze. And said nothing. The door closed softly behind them. The house fell quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now. Not empty. Not heavy. Just still. I stood there for a moment, listening to the silence, feeling the space around me settle. Then I turned back toward the dining room. The table was still set. The candles had burned lower. The food had gone cold. I walked over slowly and sat down in my chair. The same chair I had sat in for decades. The same place where I had shared meals, laughter, arguments a lifetime. I picked up my fork, took a small bite, and for the first time that night, I tasted something different. Not bitterness. Not sadness. Clarity. Because sometimes, the people you cook for, the people you open your home to, the people you build your life around, are the same ones quietly waiting for you to step aside. But that night, I didn't step aside. I stayed. In my home. At my table. In my life. And for the first time in a long time, I understood something clearly. Family is not who sits at your table. It's who respects that you built it. And if they don't, they were never truly part of it to begin with.